Hello and welcome to the Jordan Paris Show. Today I want to dive into a couple of buzzwords, namely diversity and inclusion. I think a lot when I think of those words. To discuss this with me today, I have with me my friend Dannique Blake. Dannique and I have gotten to know each other a little bit over the past couple of months. I love what she posts on LinkedIn about diversity and inclusion. It's a bit of a different message than what you'd typically hear about diversity and inclusion. She's not afraid to be politically incorrect, and she makes no apologies about it. And that's why I like her. Dannique, welcome.
Hi, Jordan. I feel like it's sad times where we're having to actually use the terms diversity and inclusion or defend the term diversity and inclusion because, for me, diversity and inclusion means a mixture of everything. But what we're getting at the moment is some people's thoughts and some other thoughts being told that they are not acceptable in the room.
Right. And I want to get to that. As a precursor, tell people exactly what it is that you do.
Okay, so I run this small business from London here in the UK.
Yes, the UK. That's an important note. Yes.
I'm in the UK, yeah. And I do work with global clients and I have global partners also. But what I do is I help businesses to be actually diverse and inclusive. So to have people in the room who think differently, not just look different. And I find that that's always a challenge because we find that there are people in the room who have different thoughts, not necessarily dangerous thoughts, who are told that their thoughts are not acceptable. So then I dig a little bit deeper with a company to find out why some conversations are okay and some aren't.
Yeah. You've described to me on a couple of occasions companies, people hiring you for the wrong reasons, so to say.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So when I first started my company, I was a little bit naive. So I had the words diversity and inclusion on my website and on my LinkedIn profile. And I clearly am a black woman. So I was having and being...
I didn't know.
Oh, you didn't? Everybody else seems to recognize that in me. But I was being introduced to companies or being invited into companies based on what I look like and the fact that I had these words diversity and inclusion on my website. And I soon found out and discovered as I did more and more workshops and programs with these companies that people thought I was controversial because I was walking into a room believing the dictionary definition of diversity and inclusion and helping people to have conversations that were different and allowing people to have some critical thinking and allowing room for people to say, this isn't my preference. And I was getting some feedback where people said, that's not okay. That's not cool, Dannique. You've let people say that they don't understand transgender. They don't understand why
What do you mean? How does this even come up in the workplace? Like transgender, like in the work. How does this come up? Please enlighten.
So I often, usually at the beginning of my programs, I start off with an hour-long session where we just go through scenarios that could happen in the workplace. And I don't tell people how I think because I think it's best to be neutral when you're in the room.
Yeah,
as the
facilitator. Law of power, by the way, is never pick a side.
Yeah. Well, and of course, as a facilitator, you want to go in and I don't want to be the presence in the room. I want to be present in the room. So I often allow people I give people these scenarios and I allow everybody in the team to navigate these safely. So obviously I don't let people use profanities. I don't let people use derogatory words as such, but I do let people navigate these conversations and then really, really, really think about why they feel the way they do. And often for me, it's always the conversations around transgender where it becomes a little bit hostile. And for me, I personally feel like whatever you do in life, however you present in life, these are your own personal choices. And sometimes my personal choices may make other people question or judge. So if I walked into a room with a big red nose ring in my nose or a big hole in my face, people will judge me.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
they would be more than within their right to, because it's something that they hadn't seen or experienced before. People might judge me from a distance, or people might even ask me questions about it and say, you know, why have you got a hole in your face? Why is there a big red nose ring in your nose? And it would be up to me as a person who was comfortable in the way I presented in life to answer those questions. And then also as a rational human being, say, I'm going to have this conversation or I'm not. And that's it, you know, and we get on and we all enjoy work. But what seems to happen in the workplace, and especially when I present these scenarios to people, is that some people's natural thought processes are censored.
Oh,
And often
because it's not politically correct?
It's well, I mean, these words aren't used, you know, because then obviously that opens up another can of worms. Often it's, you know, through anonymous feedback where people say, you allowed someone to hurt my feelings. You allowed someone to say something that I didn't quite like. And, you know, when I dig deeper, I'm a very compassionate person, so I will have these conversations with people and I dig a little deeper and I say, well, what made you uncomfortable about it? Because here were the guidelines in the room. We were all allowed to say how we felt in a rational way. So did you feel like the conversation wasn't rational, or did it just hurt your feelings?
What would hurt somebody's feelings in one of your workshops?
Oh, lots of things hurt people's feelings in my workshop. So it hurts people's feelings if I say that or I recommend that they put someone qualified at the head of a department. That upsets people because
So somebody, by somebody qualified, you mean the best, the most qualified person, irregardless of skin color or other immutable characteristics?
Yes. So if I recommend to a team that they put someone, for example, if they had a post that was for diversity and inclusion officer or specialist, and I say, this person who just so happens to be a white male really has these qualifications and has studied X, Y, and Z, they would tell me that he wasn't qualified enough.
Because they want to be quote unquote diverse. They want to hire somebody of color or a female, perhaps. They want a virtue signal.
They want it to appear diverse as opposed to it actually being diverse.
Why?
And when I ask, it's because most companies who I've spoken to fear the backlash of being cancelled or fear that their reputation may be damaged because they don't look the part. But really what is actually damaging is that you've put someone who's not qualified into a position, and that doesn't seem to resonate with people enough, and they're not understanding why certain things are not working for them in their companies or in their businesses because they've put someone who looks the part but is not the part in a position.
Yeah. Here's a funny example. I have a friend, Shay. She made a video about this. You probably know Shay on LinkedIn. And she was talking about a client of hers that this client called her so upset. It was the biggest predicament of his life. He realized in his business, most of the leaders in his business are white males. And he's like, I've done it all wrong. I have to tear the whole thing down. And Shay's like, wait a minute, hold up. You're making money, right? Like your business has been successful for a long period of time, right? Like you're creating problems where there are none.
Yeah. This is often what we do as human beings. We see something usually in the media that says this is a problem, and then we turn it into bigger problems, and then we chop them up into even bigger intersectional problems, and to which point we often ruin our businesses because we're not hiring or working with the people who help our business to grow. We are picking people because of what they look like, which is absurd to me. So I walk into a lot of businesses where similar scenarios, and they are, they're not public businesses, they're private businesses. So someone like myself or you, we've started a business, and more than likely we are going to select people. When we first start businesses, we are going to pick people that we enjoy working with. And the people that we know we enjoy working with tend to be people in our peer groups who just naturally in every single category happen to be people who look and sound like us, because we understand
We like
them
people
the
who
most.
like us.
Yeah, we like people who look and sound like us.
Yes, exactly.
And that's it. And we tend to work naturally better with people who look and sound like us, and that we are likable to. And it's not until our business develops and grows where we feel like we have a set foundation where we can then start looking for a more diverse group of diverse group of individuals to come and do some of the additional jobs and tasks within the building. Often they will not be the first people that we put into at board level or in senior teams, or because we already have those, because we've been working with them to get our businesses off the ground. And it works like that. And that's what happens. What people I think are upset about is that we have now more people from different backgrounds attending universities and gaining different types of qualifications and skills, not sitting in higher positions. But if we understand how old the capitalist world is, we'd understand that there will be a shift, because it's quite new that we've had diverse people in these colleges and universities and schools and with MBAs. So possibly in about a decade or a couple of decades, we will see a difference in the workplace. But it has nothing to do with the fact that people don't want you at the table. It's just that we are waiting for people to be qualified enough to be at the table.
Right. I see what you're saying. So you're saying that this shift towards real diversity is going to happen naturally over the next couple of decades. Can I actually thought of something when you were talking too, that when my podcast was called Growth Mindset University.
Yeah.
And back, I remember it was over a year ago, before I really woke up politically, so to say. I was like, wow, I was feeling guilty about how, wow, I barely have women on my podcast. It's like 2 out of the 10 guests that I have are women, and most are white males. And I was feeling like really guilty about it. And then I thought, I was like, wait a second. We like people who are like us. I was very much on that line of thinking at this point. I grew up very naturally looking up to people who were like me, for better or worse. I mean, should I feel guilty about that sort of thing, Dannique, or not? What's your assessment?
No, you shouldn't feel guilty for liking what you like. It would be as silly as me saying you should feel guilty for liking ice cream. It's, we like what we like until.
But I'm racist.
No.
Right?
Do you know what? I if you are racist, you are the best racist I have ever come across. I get to speak.
By the way, kidding for people who don't get the satire.
No, we know.
Some people don't.
I'm from the UK. We do sarcasm quite a lot, but we jump to people. We conclude to just people being racist, which is almost like it's a bit of a way to bully yourself into a room instead of naturally building relationships with people, which takes time. It takes time, and we
bully yourself. How do you bully yourself into a room?
Well, you call someone a misogynist. You blame. You never learn the difference between patriarchy and patriarchal oppression. They're two different things. But, we listen to people like Beyonce who tell us that we need to be strong, independent women whilst she stays with a husband who's cheated on her numerous times.
Right.
We believe that there are
these celebrities are false gods. They really are.
We believe all of these celebrities who are multi-millionaires telling us that we should think and feel something whilst they are in high top positions, telling the mass, oh, it took me really long to get here. No, it took you, be honest, it took you hard work. And it takes most people a lot of work to do to get there. I believe that everybody in their positions are in their positions, not because they forced their way into a room, because how many rooms have we been in where people, we look at people and we know that they don't deserve to be on that seat. Even though you are sat at that seat, you will still be treated as not qualified because you forced your way into the room. I meet so many people from so many backgrounds who I look at and meet and speak to who are deserving of the positions that they're in. My former CEO was a black male, such, and he deserved to be in the position that he is. He worked for that position. There was no I'm forcing my way in or I'm doing this. He has an MBE. I'm very sorry, Oz, if you are listening. I hope it is an MBE that you have. He has an MBE and he is completely qualified for that. He qualified that because he worked very hard for what he has. And I feel like there is almost a sense of people. So we have all of these people now. Let's just, if we go back to the race one. So we have a lot of black women or black men who want to be diversity and inclusion specialists with no background in sociology, no black background in psychology, no background in HR, no background in business, no background in cultural studies, none of these backgrounds. So what is it that qualifies you to be in that position?
Well, you know what it is? Can I give my answer? It's something, if people look up this term called Ethnicgnosticism, where because of your, we're using the race example, because of your melanin count, you are automatically the authority on the subject. And people who do not have the required melanin count, they don't meet that threshold, they're not allowed to talk about it.
It's absolutely ridiculous because it's not based on your melanin count. It's based on your personal experience and your personal feelings about yourself and where you are in your life. Mm-hmm. There may be people who resonate somewhat because they may have experienced some of what you've experienced, but ultimately you are going into a room to tell people that this is your experience and that they should treat you like this, not everybody else, which doesn't qualify you to be a specialist in diversity and inclusion. This is you're a specialist of yourself. You are a specialist in talking, and that's it.
Yeah. Before we go any further, can we just assert that diversity inherently, it is a good thing. I at least that's the way I understand it. That all people, all races, all genders, everybody benefits from diversity, especially in the workplace. You can vouch for that, right?
I 100% vouch for there being diversity across the board, from the head to the heart and then the exterior. Diversity is amazing and works. So yes, we definitely agree diversity 100% works.
So diversity, when people that are in their positions have earned their positions based on merit, is obviously the ideal scenario, but that's not always possible.
Yeah. So I always wonder, if you are the leader of a business, what is it that you want someone to be sat in permanently in your business, called or titled the diversity and inclusion officer? What is it that you want them to achieve? Because then that will help with the merits. So what is it that you want? Is it that you want everybody to think how they do? Because if that's the goal, then, we could put anyone in that role.
Totally. That's something I wanted to cover too. This is from actually PragerU. Jordan Peterson did a video with PragerU about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And diversity, as the way it's being implemented now in corporations and in universities, it's not diversity of opinion at all whatsoever. That can't be tolerated. Instead, it is diversity of race, ethnicity, or sex. Yeah. So that begs the question, what the heck is diversity? What is real, true diversity in your opinion? Is it even ethical to judge people on immutable characteristics? And immutable obviously means unchangeable, permanent. Is it ethical to judge people on their race or their gender?
No. If we collectively, if we all find, or most of us will find, if anyone judged me on the size of my breast or on, you know, or on my facial characteristics, whether or not you think I'm beautiful or not, we would all disagree. We would all say that is wrong, that we shouldn't look at that. So in the same breath, we should have the same opinion with how what people's physical characteristics are, including their race. And we shouldn't care about what anybody's sexuality is, because that's personal to us, unless we decide to tell you that this is what we are and we want to open up that conversation. That shouldn't matter, because I don't walk into a room and say, well, actually I'm heterosexual, or I'm bisexual, or I'm, you know, I don't have to lead with that. You don't have to lead with that,
Right.
because most people, when you are in the workplace setting, don't really care, unless you are trying to pursue them intimately.
Dr. Martin Luther King is the one that said, I don't want to be judged by the color of my skin. I'd rather be judged by the content of my character. And now we're back to judging people by the color of their skin.
Yeah.
It's like positive discrimination. Like it's weird. It's a weird thing.
It's such a weird thing. So, but I do have to come back and have a bit of compassion, because most people do read the tabloids. I don't read the tabloids, so I don't base my thoughts or feelings on what the tabloids tell me to, but most people do. So if you are the person who is at work, you have a job, you have a car, you have a nice house, you just so happen to be a black woman or man, or a gay man, or, you know, someone from the LGBT background, and you just so happen to have a day that resonated with something you read in an article on, I don't know, the Daily Mail or something, or Vice, because Vice like doing that victimhood stuff now.
Yeah.
So you read one of these articles and you say, that's how I felt yesterday. And then you go into the workplace and you walk in with that feeling. You want people to validate that feeling for you. You want people to feel, you want people to empathize with how you're feeling, which is absolutely normal. We do want that often. You know, if we fall over, we want someone to validate the fact that we fell over and that we're a little bit sad and we need a plaster. And that's fine. We can do that for a day. We can't do that for the entirety of our lives. At some point, we have to accept that what we are feeling may possibly be just an off day, or we need to get rid of what we're consuming, because sometimes what we're consuming is what's helping us to stay in that position. And then we turn what we're consuming into our natural thoughts and into ourselves. And then we go into the workplace and we want everybody to validate what we're feeling, which might not necessarily be our own feelings.
Mm-hmm. You know, I want to move on to actually inclusion. And it sounds like, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounds like you disagree with this Jordan Peterson's definition of inclusion, or the way it's being acted upon in today's world. Inclusion, the use of identity-based quotas to achieve this skewed definition of diversity and equity. So quotas, what do you think about them?
I think quotas are, I feel like in a capitalist society, quotas are necessary, because that's how we then learn how to sell to certain people. Mm-hmm. We learn that. So we find what certain groups of people want. But in a workplace setting and just in society, I don't think we should use quotas to determine diversity.
Yeah. Is this a real thing? Like, obviously, I've never worked in the corporate world. Everyone knows that. Do companies actually, and I know universities do, they have quotas of, you know, we're going to let in this many black people, we're going to let in this many Asian people. It's all systematized. This is like an actual thing in corporations too?
Yes, it 100% is, but it's about what sells. It's about what sells. So if we can be the company that has a quota of a certain demographic that we're told are underachievers, then we look like we're fighting the social justice fight. We are riding. So yes, it does exist, but I don't think it exists in a way that's harboring anything healthy in human thought and human behavior. It's harboring sales. It's turning us into commodities, as opposed to as opposed to embracing the fact that there are definitely some people in the workplace that won't have come from a very well-off background and who may need a little bit of extra nurturing, it won't harbour that. It just says that this person exists in our building.
Yeah, I want to comment on the commodities part. It's essentially saying immutable characteristics give you value.
Yeah.
Your skin color gives you value or not.
Yes.
Your gender gives you value or not. And that's a weird place to be in.
It's such a strange place because we know that this doesn't make sense. Rational human beings, rational adult human beings know that this doesn't make sense. But there are so many rational adult human beings telling young human beings that that's what makes sense. What makes sense is that we talk to young people and say, here is my experience from life, not the entire demographic of all the people who look like me, because we don't know all of them. Here is what my experience is, and I'd like you to not experience this or to experience this and act accordingly. And if it doesn't work for you, you figure it out. That's what we should be telling people. That's how we can articulate it. But what we are doing from everywhere, from in the home to school to colleges to universities to when you arrive in the workplace, we are saying you are going to be treated like this because you look like this, which is unfair and not realistic or the truth.
Yes. So, big question here, Dannique. Should race be a factor when hiring, or should it not even be included on the application? And same goes for college admissions. Should we just omit, and this is a discussion, this is a hot button issue.
Yeah.
Should race be omitted from the application entirely? Like, should we be colorblind? We don't even know who we're looking at?
Okay, I have the capitalist side of me that says, yes, it should be included because, we're a capitalist. We want to make money and we know that we can make money off of all of this categorizing people. But the actual human side of me says, no, we need to spend more time being doers instead of talking. We need to be the people that don't even need to put those categories on the forms because we know we have done enough to make sure we have a wide, diverse group of people in the pool. We shouldn't even have to put those on. But as I say, I'm a rational human being, and I understand that for capitalism to work and thrive, we need to have those categories.
Going back to diversity, what is more diverse? Is it adding Bernie Sanders to a group of 100 conservatives, or is it adding Candace Owens, a black woman, to a group of 100 conservatives?
I think having both of them is diverse. I think having both of them in the room is diverse because we need both voices. They are both voices are necessary, and I think if we're talking in the political sense, what I think both sides do sometimes is they still do have this need to pick someone who looks like something in order to have this voice. I think what we need to do is have both people in the room, and I think what we need to stop doing is crying when something doesn't sound how we want it to sound. I also believe that, and this is a bit of a caveat away from that question, I believe we have to remove the idea that racism and racial oppression are the same thing. Because once we remove those, we're now saying that anybody can be racist, because I think what happens is, we have a Candace, let's take Candace Owen, for example. We have a Candace Owen in the room and she has a different voice from the collective black women. And what happens is that she's attacked and she's called an Uncle Tom or some worse names.
A white supremacist.
Oh, yeah, all the worst names, because she has had a different experience in her life and has a different mindset, and she's grown up with these sorts of views. She's still a political person. She is still someone in the media. So she is going to be antagonistic because that's her career. That's her business.
Right.
And that's what gets her likes. And,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, and so that's normal.
Totally.
We all do that. But what we need to do, and if we could separate racism from racial oppression, which I do totally believe a racial oppression is there, but I'll come back to that in a second.
Yes.
Racism can be demonstrated by anybody. And once we stop giving some people a pass to be racist, because the things that have said about Candice Owing
Yes.
from some Black people
Yes.
and other people of colour are racist.
Yes.
So once we decide if we could get this idea of that racism and racial oppression are one in the same, we need to remove that. They're not. Racial oppression is, like, I need to give an example for this. So let's say I fall over a table. My leg hurts. The table is the racial oppression. It's not going anywhere. It's there. It is a structure that has been created, in my sense, for marketing purposes. Again, I believe everything is for marketing. Everything is marketable. Racism is a business.
Oh, yes. Race hustlers. Yeah, they're real.
Yeah. So I believe, like, racial oppression and patriarchal oppression and any other sorts of oppressions that we have, or suppression, is the table. My knee is hurting me. Now, my choices are, I smash the table, but then it's going to really hurt me and I'm probably not going to do it very quickly. Or I attend to my knee. Because once I've smashed the table, my knee's still going to hurt. So that's the difference between racial oppression and racism. Racism is the knee hurting that we're not looking at. And racial oppression is the table that we keep trying to smash down whilst our knee is still hurting. So we need to attend to the knee first before we could even try to smash the racial oppression. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Am I being too in my head now? Sometimes I get there. I'm a bit hippie-ish sometimes. But we totally need to see them as two different things. And I think the most important thing for us to do is to address what's happening with ourselves. So, like with your knee, it's yourself. So you want to make sure that's healed and it's working properly, and you're functioning well, in order to actually decide, well, is the racial oppression going anywhere? How do we break it down? How do we move around it? How do we navigate this? And am I in the right frame of mind? And I don't think most people are in a frame of mind. Most people are in a hurt frame of mind. Most people are in a retaliate, revenge frame of mind, which is not what we need right now. What we need is for people to look at themselves and say, am I talking or am I doing? Am I doing the most I can to help my community, myself, my family, my workplace? And if you're not, then you need to be the one that fixes that. Nobody can come and save you. And racial oppression is still going to be there.
Well, good stuff, Dannique. This has been a really good conversation. I wanna give you the floor to, is there anything that you wish we covered on diversity and inclusion that we didn't cover today? Anything that you wish you would have been able to say, or nothing come to mind? I can move on to my last question.
So it's probably not a wish. It's probably just going over the fact that I would love the conversation around diversity and inclusion to be what it really should be, not what I feel. It's not about what I feel. It's about how do we have these conversations with the understanding that we are all human and we will all have different experiences, and that we can all safely go into a room and feel okay with having these different experiences. Obviously, we don't want people to be violent with them, but we would like to be in rooms. Many of us are already in rooms, but we would like to be in rooms where we just feel psychologically safe to be someone who supports Trump, someone who
diversity
supports,
of thought.
just diversity of thought and opinions, and just go into a room and say, you know what, I don't agree with that, but I can still work with you because your character is what makes you you.
One of the most dangerous things you can be nowadays, Dannique, is being openly conservative, coming out as conservative.
Yes.
Coming out as a Trump supporter. And that's dangerous because there really isn't much tolerance for diversity of thought nowadays, unfortunately. I don't know how we've gotten to this place, but
because because we hear all of Trump's thoughts, warts and all. Is that a phrase in the US? Warts and all?
What?
Like we hear...
I have no idea.
Warts and all. So it's like we hear everything. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He says exactly what he feels. And some of the stuff that he says is a bit,
Yeah.
But he says it and we know it. And I believe better the demon that you know than the one you don't know. And I feel like we have gotten used to being in a world where we are led to believe that if you are a Democrat leader, you are not a racist and you are not a bad person. You are Jesus Christ himself.
Morally pure,
You are morally pure. But we could potentially, and I'm going to upset people, we could potentially ask the people of Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Pakistan, most of the Middle East, what they thought of Barack Obama.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
wow, yeah.
Everybody isn't as pure as we think we want them to be. It's our idea of what we're being sold. We're being sold the dream of someone who resonates with what we've been told to think and feel about people.
Yeah. I guess I'll ask that then of you from the perspective of the United Kingdom. What have your thoughts been on the whole election over the past couple of weeks? What are you seeing from your view? How are people over there seeing it in general?
Well, the thing is I'm from a country where we're all very nice to each other and we don't often say what we mean, and it's very,
So people don't like him over there.
Yeah, I mean, some people. I walk into rooms sometimes, or I do virtual rooms, and immediately, and I guess it's just because I'm black, I get people saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad Trump's gone, and I'm so glad this," and I was like, "Okay, cool, but what is it that you're glad about?" Because whatever happens in the US happens in the US, and what's happening here, I feel, is slightly more dangerous than what's happening in the US. It's just that the US do it with so much more drama and so much more, the lights and stars are flashing there, whereas we're doing it all very politely and hushing each other. So I don't feel like I've had many conversations with people that are not feelings-based around the election in the UK. I've had so many great conversations with people from the US, in particular Angie C. If you're not connected to her, amazing lady to be connected to.
Yes, I am.
We had a really long conversation, about 5 hours long. And she's just so clever and so smart. And she has her feelings, but she's able to be rational and have a rational conversation about why she became a conservative this year. I was compelled. I mean, it still didn't move me. You know how my thoughts, I'm right down the centre. So I'm just like, yeah, you gotta go. I'll talk to anyone. But it was just a really nice conversation to have. Similarly to the conversations I have with you, where they're very rational. There's no, I don't like you. I've been blocked by a few of my liberal friends on LinkedIn because I am centred, wild, and, having conversations with people where we agree about some things, we disagree about others, but fundamentally all we want is humans to have a peaceful time on this planet whilst we're here. It's great to just have conversations with people who don't feel like blocking you because you've said that everybody should be able to have the conversation that they feel comfortable having.
Well, Dannique Blake, this has been wonderful. Culturedinsights.com, to my friends with companies that want real diversity and inclusion training, Labeled Accordingly is her new podcast. And of course, you can find Dannique on LinkedIn, Dannique Blake on LinkedIn. Dannique, that was awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It's, I love speaking to you. So.
There you have it, my friends. This has been another episode of the Jordan Paris Show. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, there are a couple of things that you can do. Number one is, of course, share with your friends and family. I think that they would really appreciate it. Number two, we have a free community, a censor-free community on Telegram. You can join that group at jordanparis.com/group. I'd love to meet you. And lastly, your voice is powerful and it is important. And if you'd like to use your voice and start your own podcast, I'd love to help you out. jordanparis.com/course is where you can find my free course on how to become a rockstar podcaster. That's all. Thanks everyone for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode of The Jordan Paris Show.